Welcome to Build It TV. My name is Rob, and we're here today for another episode of The People That Build It. And this caveman looking motherfucker is Alex. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Alex, 24 years old. I am a CNC machinist and I own a rusty Nissan.
Nice, nice. There's a theme for my interviews, and you pretty much have to own a rusty Nissan to qualify. So what inspired you to build this car?
I'm not too sure really. It's an S13, isn't it? So it's the quintessential drift car sort of thing. Don't really know, just saw it and liked it and wanted to change up from what I was already doing at the time. So yeah,
so very BMW background.
Yeah, so I originally came from E36s. My first car was a 318 IS E36, which had the...
Your first ever car?
No, first drift car.
Oh right, I was going to say.
M50 swap, all that sort of jazz. And then just progressed from there. Ended up building a 3-litre stroker NA engine for that one.
Nice.
And then got a new shell, black car. Ended up building the Turbo M50 motor setup for that one. And that again sort of plateaued into an area where I felt I can't really do anything else to it. And I thought, fuck it, let's start again. Just completely start from fresh.
Nice.
Hence the S13. When I bought the car, it had an RB25 in it.
Right.
It was just a long block sat in the bay. All the parts were in the boot, in boxes. And it was a case of, I took it all apart, just had it all laid out on the floor in front of me, and I was like, right, Nissan puzzle, start piecing it back together. Luckily, got it all back together, put it back in the car, and it actually started and ran. I was like, okay, that's pretty amazing, but nice. Whatever, we won't count our chickens before they hatch, sort of thing. And yeah, ran the car around with the RB for a little bit of time, got it running good, but there's always the typical Nissan engine reliability issues that everyone always talks about. And talking with all my friends, and especially with Mikey Dove, before, he said something to me. He was like, "Stick to what you know." I was like, "Yeah, that's a fair point." So just BMW engines and what I know.
Surprise, motherfucker!
That engine I had owes me absolutely nothing. I bought the engine for not a lot back in the day with a good friend of mine, and it's just been faultless ever since.
That's right. I still find it crazy how cheap you can pick up some of the when you're used to the Nissan world of prices and stuff. How cheap you can pick up some of the BMW.
Yes, that was one of the main inklings for me to do what I've done. Is if I blow this up, I can go get another one for 100 quid.
Yeah.
If I blew the RB up,
you're looking probably around 800 quid.
Yeah, for one, and I was like, that doesn't sound fun.
No.
And as I say, the engines are super simple, super reliable. You don't have really any issues apart from the mediocre cooling system issues, but that's more idiots that don't know how to use the car than the actual engine itself. So yeah, it just seemed like a no-brainer for me, really. I had the skills and the equipment to make it happen, put it together, really.
Okay, let's have a look inside the engine bay. Get to this end. Well, first of all, that's definitely not meant to be there. This big BMW logo. So tell us a little bit about this engine.
Right, so the engine started off life as a 2.5 litre M50 from a 325i. The bottom end has been built into a 3 litre using M54 internals. So it's got crank rods and pistons from a M54 B30, which is a 330i E46 engine.
Right.
So that, and it's also got a decompression set and ARP head studs. So it's just shy of 3.1 litres of displacement, basically.
Titanium has a nuclear reaction with a flux capacitor. Carry the two, changing its atomic isotoner into a radioactive spider. Fuck you, science!
And it's got what in the BMW community is referred to as a hot cam swap. So it's got two inlet cams. So it's got the standard inlet cam on this side, and then it's got another one on the exhaust side. And it's basically the most aggressive cams you could get without going aftermarket using standard stuff.
So literally take an inlet cam from a different engine and stick that in.
Well, it's actually from the same engine.
From the same engine?
It's the inlet cam that would have come in this engine. You just get another one on the other side. And then you have 240 degrees of duration, 9.7 mil of lift on both sides. And as I say, without going aftermarket cams, it's the most aggressive you can get, really. But it's all using standard internals, so the engine is all pretty much standard. So if anything breaks, it's easy to replace.
What sort of power do you reckon that would take?
They can take, people say about 550 is a safe number for them. I guess, I've not had this dynoed, it probably makes 450, something like that, in that sort of region.
Again, perfect for street car drift.
Yeah, especially in a car that weighs almost quarter of a ton less than the BMW that this used to be in.
Yeah.
It certainly makes it a hoop to drive. Subframe is an R33 subframe, simply because that was what was in the car when the RV was in the car. An SR subframe probably would have made it a bit easier to fit due to space constraints, but you went with what you had. So
Yeah, definitely.
hey ho. In the BMWs, the engine normally sits over at a 30-degree angle, but that introduces a load of issues in this sort of setup because you've got tendency issues with your brakes, your clutch master, turbo gets really close to the body of the car.
Yeah, literally ending further over, and
on
you're it.
So what I've done is utilise BMW diesel engines sit at a lesser angle. They sit at 15 degrees. So it's actually running a BMW 6-speed gearbox, which allows the engine to sit up at 15 degrees, which gives me a load more room on the hot side, loads more room to the clutch and the brakes. It just makes it a bit of an easier package to work with because the engine leaning over so far. It does make it a bit of a pain in the ass to work on as well as fit into a tight spot.
It's not off the shelf manifold, is it?
No, that's a custom made manifold. I made that all myself.
Yourself?
Yeah.
Nice.
As well as all the charge pipes, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and the inlet is adapted?
So the inlet manifold's from a company in Poland. It's called FMEC Performance. However, it's designed for the engine sat at the standard angle. So,
of course, so it would have been up in the air, basically.
actually, it actually drooped down here.
Oh, right,
so
okay.
it came down and it drooped right down there.
Because it would have been more that way.
Yeah, because the engine's more leant over, so the intake was all drooping down, and I was like, well, that don't look very good. So, brand new manifold, simply cut it in half.
Nice.
Cut 15 degree section out, welded it back together.
And did you have any issues with, because obviously on all the Nissans, your inlet's this side, the turbo's that side. So downpipes, is that an issue?
Not massively, no, because I knew I was going to have to fabricate a new downpipe anyway.
There's actually a surprising amount of room.
Yes, yeah, there is. So that's a full 3-inch downpipe all the way back to the rear half from what would be the cat back is standard S13 exhaust.
Okay.
So my downpipe comes down, crosses over the car and meets the standard exhaust.
Yeah,
so if I wanted to, I could actually go and buy a completely standard off the shelf S13 original exhaust and it would fit onto my downpipes. Again, that's all part of the whole keeping it all as OE as possible, because if I go and destroy an exhaust, I can just go get another S13 exhaust.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't have to fabricate a new one. It picks up the standard heater hoses. It's a Nissan radiator.
So it's still got heating going through?
Yeah, so it's still got all the heaters. It's still got all your creature comforts.
No aircon?
No aircon.
No, that's the one everyone ditches. We live in England, who needs it?
Yeah. What else?
Management. What management is it?
It's actually, so it's running an ECU Master DT3 piggyback at the moment.
Right, okay.
So it's got the standard ECU controlling the ignition and all that sort of stuff.
So it's standard in BMW, because obviously Nissan.
So standard BMW M50 ECU controlling all the ignition, but the ECU Master DT3 is controlling all the fluid inside of it.
Okay.
Again, because this whole engine idea stemmed from just trying to do it as cheap as possible. So the first time around, it was just a standard ECU with a chip tune, which ran great, but it was excessively rich, wasted a lot of fuel, and there's probably a lot of power left on the table.
Right.
So this time around, again, I tried to keep it as cheap as possible because I don't like throwing money at things.
No, fair enough. It's not for the sake of it, is it?
So yeah, it's running an ECU Master DT3 to control the fueling, and it's night and day difference compared to how it used to run and drive.
Yeah.
Especially with the larger intake manifold and throttle body. The original ECU really wasn't enjoying running it with that. It just couldn't figure itself out. So I was like, right, I need to do something management wise now.
So stuff like this here, this is BMW.
Yeah, so that's BMW throttle position sensor. The only thing non-BMW is in there, I've actually got an RB25 coolant temperature sensor.
Right, okay.
So it works with the coolant temperature sensor on the dash. So the dash temperature gauge works. Another interesting fact as well is because the engine's sat more upright, the original BMW power steering pump would have sat about 3 inches lower than the sumpers at the moment.
Right, okay.
The pulley would have been the lowest part of the car, which isn't a good idea. So it's actually running a full hydroelectric power steering system from our Vauxhall Astra.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So hidden down in there, there's a power steering pump, which comes on with ignition.
Yeah, literally just from ignition rather than any sort of...
so the pumps are so cheap, and I really can't fault the system. I have no issues with it. And then you don't run into issues when you're drifting of overheating the power steering fluid because you're spinning a power steering pump at 6,000 RPM. And it's been awesome with electric power steering. Even for just pushing the car around, you can turn the ignition on, you've got power steering without the engine running.
Of course,
so,
yeah.
Again, that was a really awesome thing to utilise.
What's your setup for the interior? I can see that the gear knob is a bit different.
Yeah, so it's got a gear knob that's mounted to the body to utilise the BMW shifter. So there's actually a plate that bolts to the floor with the shift rod coming down and just picks up the standard BMW linkage. But apart from that, it's just all Nissan in here. You got your drift button for the handbrake. I got a nice triple gauge set that got off a lad that 3D prints them.
Nice.
Which is just replaces the centre vent, and it's a real nice, neat way of doing it. Obviously, bucket seat on the driver's side, set of car harnesses, in true DADM fashion, standard passenger seat with a set of harnesses. Yeah, you don't want to be falling around and flopping around when you're out driving.
Still got some comfort, still got heat, as you said.
Yeah, so it's still got all its comfort, still got heaters, it's nice radio, it's got all the carpets in the front, still got all the dual cards, non-cracked dash, which can be a bit of a rarity these days.
They even worth more than the cars.
Yeah. The rear end's all stripped out, but that's simply because how I got it. I would really like to put interior back in it, just to keep it quieter, make it a bit more enjoyable to drive.
Fuel system?
Right, so fuel system, we've got a Walbro 255 in a tank, simply acting as a pickup pump. And then behind the fire shield here, we've got a surge tank with a Bosch 044 feeding the engine. Simply the firewall there, if in case it catches fire, it keeps you safe, and it also shuts up the pump because the pump's really noisy.
Yeah. Body work, so inspiration look to me looks definitely sort of JDM Hot Boy style.
Yeah, so it's got more of a street style sort of look. So the front bumper, the side skirts, the rear is a hot rod kit. So it's extremely similar to your Type X coupe kit. But the front lip, the side skirts and the rear is just a little bit deeper, a little bit more flary. And you got your GTR style cutouts on the bumper. Yeah, so nice. I wanted something that's not too leery in your face, but I just want to do another Type X sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we've got Origin Type 3 front and rear fenders. And a 326 rear wing. Again, they're hot rod skirts, so they're similar to Type X Kooky ones, but they're just a little bit deeper, a little bit bigger.
So the rear balance is so much better than the Kooky one, because any aftermarket Kooky one you buy,
Yeah.
doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Being one piece makes such a difference.
Yeah. Now this kit, they fit really well. Even the rear, it's meant for a JDM rear bumper.
Oh, 25
plus 55. Plus 55 front and rear, yeah.
Right.
And we're riding on 18, 10.5, plus 0 on the back, plus 5 on the front, with spacers. We've also got 45mm wider arms on the front, and actually running a 14 rear subframe, so that's another 10mm wider either side. All made my own, lower control arms and cut knuckles.
Yeah. And what was talking about drivetrain, the diff? Prop.
Prop is actually a standard S13 non-ABS prop. What I did is I took because the BMW box is a 3-bolt flange, so I took that 3-bolt flange, cut the prop off, machined a bore into the middle of it. So I got a SI gearbox, took it all apart, took the tail shaft out of it, cut it off, machined a diameter on there and press fit it into a 3-bolt BMW flange.
Right, okay.
Welded that up. So the 3-bolt flange bolts to the back of the gearbox. You have these spline stubs sticking out. Standard 13 prop, slide straight on, and that's it. So it's all, again, going back, it's all standard Nissan stuff. If I break a prop, get another one.
Yeah.
The weak point in the system is probably just going to be the little bit I made, and if that breaks, it's just get another broken SR gearbox because they're everywhere.
Yeah. They're all broken.
Get another 320D front half of the prop to cut the flange off. Again, they're common, so easily replaceable if anything does break. But so far, touch wood, I've not had any issues like that.
Nice.
So going back, it's actually now running a 350Z rear diff. So now it's got a 3.5 from a 350Z. That also utilises the stronger 6B1 shafts.
Is that LSD anyway?
It was a standard LSD, yeah, but it's been welded. The stronger Z diff, which again I made all my own conversion bushes to fit in the subframe. So far so good, that's been taking the power just fine. And the ratios are so much better suited for the BMW gearbox. It could even be a bit longer still, if I find a 3.3 auto T diff. But for now it's pretty good for what it needs to be.
And what was your first ever car?
My first ever car was an old 1989 Mark II Polo bread van.
Nice, I know the style.
Yeah.
There'll be a picture somewhere.
It started off life as a 1 litre 4 on the floor. Lasted about 2 months like that.
Yeah.
Done a 5-speed gearbox swap. 4 weeks later, I had a 1.3 single cam with bike carbs and all that sort of
surprisingly quick
stuff.
engine for a
but again, that only lasted about 2 months. And then I built a 1.4 twin cam engine for that one, which was running around 120 horsepower. Again, on bike cars, bought and polished the head myself, like built it all myself, and then it stayed that way until I sold it basically. But the problem was I bought a BMW and then that was bye-bye front wheel drive.
So there's a point where as soon as you start driving rear-wheel drive cars, you can't go back.
Yeah, there is.
I think my first, all my first cars were Renault 5s, and then I got into Renault 5 turbos and things.
Yeah.
I think there was a point where I had blown up 3 engines and I had 3 cars on the driveway, all with blown engines, nothing to drive.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, my parents lived in the middle of nowhere as well. So. Best car movie?
Oh, best car movie. Two-lane blacktop. I like two-lane blacktop. You ever seen two-lane blacktop?
No, never even heard of it.
It's 55 Chevy and just kids street racing across America sort of thing.
Nice.
It's old school like American sort of movie.
It's good on the list.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But definitely check it out.
What was the hardest part to build on this car?
Hardest part was probably keeping it all Nissan.
Right.
I've done it in such a way where I could take this engine out and I could put an SR in it, I could put a CA in it, I could put another RB in it.
Everything's reversible.
Everything is reversible. Nothing on the car side of it has been heavily modified to an extent where it's unusable. Even down to the wiring harness, it all plugs into the original Nissan plugs.
Really?
The only thing I had to do was take a lump hammer to the trans tunnel to get the bell housing to fit, because it was that much larger. It's even on the original Nissan subframe, the original Nissan mountain points.
I'm not going to joke. Hold that thought. There we go.
Yeah. Everything on it is using as much original Nissan points as possible. I say nothing is taken away from the original specs. So I could, in 5 years' time, I might want to put an RB back in it, for example. So I could just unplug everything and put an RB back in it.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's it.
And was there anything that was particularly easy in the build that you thought would be a ball ache and actually turn out to be alright?
Putting the engine in. The engine was
actually getting the block to sit in there.
Yeah, it was actually a lot easier because compared to an RB, an M50 is about half an inch shorter.
Yeah.
And about an inch lower because the RBs have the over-the-top intake manifold.
Yes.
Yeah. The M50 actually sat about a good half inch lower than the RB. So that made space a lot easier to work with, to be honest.
Nice. John, I think as RBs get more and more expensive, stuff like this is going to start.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple cars out there that I know run in the process of running, in the process of being put together.
Obviously, Jim's got one.
Yeah, Jim Dark has one with an M54 in it.
But not with the turbo?
No, it's naturally aspirated. There's another lad with an M52 in it, again, naturally aspirated. There's another lad I know of over in Europe, I think he's in Poland. He has a supercharged M50 in his. That thing goes to the next level of bounce. It's super sick. And there's a couple over in the States that, again, are in various sort of bits and pieces. Some of them run, some of them don't, some of them are in the process of, but there's probably only a handful that you can probably count on your hand that have this.
That got that.
They've got them being
and most of them not turbocharged.
No, there's very few I'm aware that are turbocharged.
So if you went back and built it again, is there anything you would change or tweak and go, it'd be easier, better to do it this way or another?
I'd make the sump again.
Yeah.
Because I had to fabricate my own sump, and it works.
To clear the subframe?
Yeah, and plus the BMW sump sits super low.
Right.
It would have been, currently as the car sits, touching the floor.
Right, okay.
So I had to basically cut and raise the sump up a good 3 inches. But then to do so, you lost the oil capacity, so I added wings on the side. So it actually holds about half a litre more oil than it would have originally.
Right.
But I'm still quite new to fabricating aluminium, and the welding's okay, but it leaks a little bit and
Right.
stuff. So going back, knowing what I know now about fabricating aluminium, I would have done it differently.
Put that in.
Yeah, and it would have just been a bit nicer.
Nice. Have you had any hate at all from putting a BMW German engine into a Japanese car?
Surprisingly not, no. A lot of people see it and they go, why have you done that? And you explain it and they go, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it just makes sense, right?
And I think as well, because a lot of Nissan owners accept that everything's really expensive, so doing something that is saving money and just as equally awesome, and you'll hear it later, it sounds not like a BMW at all. There's really no downsides apart from the time and effort factor of getting it in the hole. So no, I haven't really had anyone get angry at me for it.
Right.
All the purists coming at me with pitchforks and stuff like that.
So I think you know, a lot of people do RBs. Obviously, I'm doing RB swap at the minute. K series seems to be the thing that's kicking off at the moment.
Yeah.
On that, again, not the cheapest of engine to buy.
No, they're not as cheap as like BMW engines, obviously, but they can make some really good power. I mean, I've seen unopened K series making north of 400 horsepower. Just put a turbo on, don't even open the block, just standard head gasket, standard everything, and away you go. Granted, they might not sound as good because it's a turbocharged 4-cylinder, and sorry everyone, 4-cylinders don't sound very good. But yeah, I think people are, especially as Nissan stuff's getting harder to find as well, and certainly more expensive, people are looking at alternate options.
I think this is a conversation I had with Mikey as well, which is that they stopped making this car, and pretty much anything to do with this car pushing 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe even 20 years. Yeah, probably 15 years ago. And so they only made so many. And you think about how many 3 Series are out there, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
You know, that are, I mean, hundreds of thousands of them.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's like you look on the websites of how many cars are left, and you look at like S13s, for example, they only ever sold 20 odd thousand in the UK, whereas 3 Series BMWs is over 100,000 cars, over 200,000 cars. Yeah, and they all, like, especially with the E36 generation, they share parts up to the E46 generation.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's interchangeable, so especially on the engine side of things, bits are just so easy to come by. And arguably they're all reliable. So
yeah, fair enough. And what's next for this? What's the next plan?
Just probably get it ready for paint because it needs painting. But just enjoy it for a bit. I've finally sorted out all the niggles and got it running nice and sounding nice, and yeah, just enjoy it for a bit.
Nice.
And then
Drive
probably
it.
put it all back apart and do the paint, body and paint, and then just see where the wind takes us, really.
Nice. So massive thank you to Alex for letting us come and video his car today and taking us out on a run. I really do think those M series engine conversions are going to be a big thing for loads of different stuff. I'd love to see one in maybe like an MX-5 or something like that. That'd be a pretty cool swap. Also, big thank you to Matt for coming up and helping with the video in. So make sure you go and check out his social media as well. Remember, if you like this video, your support is what allows me to do more. So please do like and subscribe to the channel. And the more subscribers we get, the more videos we'll be able to do. So hit that button. And thank you to everyone who stayed to the end. Really do appreciate it. And you get the bonus content of all this drifting footage. Check it out. Take care.